Today we're talking about the different types of weapons used in faith-based attacks. And Shanna, when we look at the deadly force incident study, we learn that there's a whole broad range of weapons used.
Today I want to talk about just more of the obscure scenarios that we have. And a lot of people don't realize when they're practicing for a deadly force incident at their church or getting together to do scenarios. It's a gunman that comes in like you see on the news. We're going to go through a few case studies from recent years that will shed light on our statistics. So the weapons used that we track are, first of all, guns, knives or cutting objects, vehicles, and then explosives and arson. We only include arson whenever there are people inside the building. Explosives, we always include. An interesting number is the guns account for 57% of incidents, which is not as high as it's portrayed. So that means when you have a deadly force incident at your church, if you do, about half of the time it's not actually going to be a gun or a gunman active shooting. It's going to be something more obscure.
Yeah, and that's important for security teams to know, because if we only train one scenario or one thought process, then it kind of interrupts what we call the OODA loop, where we process things. And so if we're getting different information than what we've planned in our minds, that's going to cause some problems. And so, like, from a security team standpoint, you know, when we have somebody that catches our attention, we need to be paying attention to the fact that they can use a lot of different tools as weapons, not just a gun. So we need to keep our eyes, you know, on their bodies, on their waists, on their hands, on what's around them. They can grab something off of a table or something like that. So it's definitely something we need to consider in training. So I think most of us are aware, at least recording this in 2025, that right at the beginning of the year, we had 2 different incidents on national news that involved vehicles. And we see vehicles used in some attacks at churches, but what other kinds of examples do we see?
One of the weirdest ones that I read, it was a Church of Scientology in California in 2019. A man drove up in a Bentley and he came out wielding a sword, just walked into the church and altercation took place. He was confronted by 2 police officers. He wound up being stopped, shot and killed by the officers. Both officers were shot in this attack, and I don't know if it was crossfire or if he was able to get a weapon from them, but the officers survived. He died that day, but nobody expects a sword-wielding guy to walk into their church. So that one was super weird.
I haven't been to too many security trainings where we scenario or where we gameplay somebody attacking with a sword. That's quite unusual. Also unusual that the officers got hit. You mentioned the possibility of crossfire, or the possibility that guy, that attacker, got a hold of somebody's weapon. For me, a training point on that is just to keep in mind that when we have armed security, they need to stay armed and not lose track of where their weapon is. So some things is, are you using good gear there, and are you actually keeping your weapon concealed so that somebody doesn't get a hold of it in a situation like that? Because that's another kind of unexpected weapon, right? That somebody shows up without one and then might disarm somebody at church and get a weapon. So definitely something we need to keep track of.
And speaking of securing weapons, one of the first obscure topics that I wanted to go into, and this is just to get your mind around some of the things that you have to face in these ministries. I mean, this whole family's there, and I was just reading one this last week where a parishioner left their gun under their seat and was found by a cleaner. Thank goodness it was found by the cleaner of the church and not a child.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to receive all of the great content from the Faith-Based Security Network. Now back to our video.
On November 5th of 2020, in a tiny church in Pennsylvania, real small church, only 23 parking spaces in their parking lot. a 10-year-old boy had gotten a hold of a gun that was in the church in a lockbox. Apparently the 10-year-old broke into the lockbox, is what the report says. And he was outside with the gun. Parishioners were inside the church. Grandma came out to stop him. Grandma was shot a couple of times. She had to be airlifted out of there. The gun was taken from him and nobody died in that incident, but just horrific. Bullets were going through the sanctuary. And what will you do as a security team when you've got an armed 10-year-old? Is he even purposely shoot? Think about what you would do in that situation.
That's one of those really difficult things that law enforcement and that our security teams need to be planning for, especially on the school side of things. If your campus has a school, a lot of those school shooters are kids. So you also have to plan in your training, what does it look like not to face a full-grown man who's dressed like a terrorist, but what about that kid that has a weapon on your property? How do you deal with that? It's definitely something that security teams need to consider.
Yeah. And then we had Lakewood, where the woman came in with her 7-year-old in just a horrific attack that destroyed that little boy's life. And there was one prior to that, actually, April 21st of 2019 on Easter Sunday. A woman went into the church holding her 10-month-old baby in one hand and a gun in the other. She got up behind the pastor on stage, was yelling about being willing to die and that she was going to blow the church up. And she pointed the gun at the churchgoers. She pointed the gun at her 10-month-old baby. She waved it in the air, and thankfully the church members tackled her, got the gun away, and the baby wound up being safe. But those are situations that we just don't expect.
So we've seen strange weapons, we've seen strange attackers, at least from what is normal. We've seen small churches with 23 parking spaces, and we've seen huge church. Lakewood's one of the larger churches in the country. And this is all included in the DFI study. So what could your average church do with the information from the DFI study?
Oh, they can absolutely use it for practicing scenarios. It's great to know where most attacks start, how they start, what to expect. And then another thing that I just love is we don't only track these incidents and keep statistics of it to help the security teams. We have an annual security operations summit where we hear firsthand from these guys. The security director of Lakewood joined us last year and was able to shed some light, but the case is still under litigation. So this year we're hoping to be able to hear more of the lessons learned. And not only him, there's security operators from across the country, pastors, the heroes that stop these incidents. They all gather together and give us firsthand information and really clear pictures of what they wish they had done better, and it's so valuable.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about being part of the Faith-Based Security Network is getting to see different perspectives. Again, we've got huge churches represented, and we've got very tiny churches represented. And everybody in that group has a voice, and everybody in that group has ideas, and we share things together. And so you already mentioned it, but one of the best places to experience that is our Security Operators Summit. We call it our SOS. And for 2025, that's going to be in San Antonio. I know it's kind of early in the planning, but can you give us some details about that?
Yeah, it's always the last weekend in July. So it starts on Wednesday with some pre-event intensives, 4-hour intensive trainings. And then Thursday kicks off the actual SOS. And it's just an incredible time to build up, encourage, and give some valuable tools to our security operators. bolsters them, and they keep coming back to hear more, and it's great, the new crowd that comes in, and we're really looking forward to it.
A great opportunity to come and grow professionally and spiritually, or to bring your entire security team and grow together as a team and experiencing this.
That's my favorite thing to see. I love it when the teams come together and are able to take all that information back. It's more effective that way.
Well, we'll have a link to the registration for the SOS Summit, and we'll also have a link in the notes for access to the Deadly Force Incident Study. But if you go to our website, fbsnamerica.com, over on the About tab, you'll find it listed underneath there. Shanna, thank you so much for sharing some lessons learned from the Deadly Force Incident Study today.